The night in ancient Edo was not a cessation, but a transformation, a city shedding its daytime skin of strict social order and samurai decorum to reveal a hungrier, more fragrant underbelly where paper lanterns glowed like low-hanging fruit over rain-slicked streets, and the air thickened with the scents of soy, fish fat, and burning charcoal. A moving kitchen emerging from the shadows where vendors with carts and shoulder poles turned bridge approaches and temple gates into a public banquet hall for laborers, messengers, and even incognito samurai who all stood shoulder to shoulder, eating without ceremony under the eaves, their meals defined by speed, warmth, and necessity rather than luxury. From the quick, democratic slurp of soba noodles from a mobile pot to the rich, oily indulgence of grilled eel on a stick, the gentle comfort of sweet rice dumplings, and the efficient, salty bite of fish cakes, all consumed in a bustling, noisy democracy of hunger that blurred social ranks under the shared steam of food, operating in a delicate, pragmatic balance with the city's ever-present fear of fire, their minimal setups ready to vanish at a moment's notice, leaving by dawn only the memory of warmth and a faint scent of damp charcoal, a testament to a city that was fed not in quiet homes, but standing up in its own vibrant, rainy heart. Far across time and continent, in the damp, smoky gloom of Roman Londinium, domestic life was a similarly public, resilient act of identity, where a house did not offer retreat from the city, but absorbed its constant noise, the rattle of carts, the shouts of vendors, the hammering of workshops, and the intimate sounds of neighboring families through thin walls that made privacy a fantasy, while inside, a fierce commitment to Romanitis was maintained against the British climate through painted walls in reds and yellows that imitated distant marble, mosaic floors that provided clean, orderly footing against the outside mud, and the ever-present eye-watering haze from cooking braziers and precious olive oil lamps that stained ceilings and clung to clothing, a tangible price paid for light and warmth in a poorly insulated world, where sleep was a flexible arrangement of mats rolled out in shared rooms, hygiene was a communal affair relying on public latrines, and the entire cramped, noisy, smoky existence served as a daily, defiant rehearsal of civilization, a way for inhabitants to insist, through painted illusion and ordered stone underfoot, that Rome and they belonged here too, on this gray frontier. This human instinct to create order, community, and identity in the face of external pressure or mundane hardship finds perhaps its most potent expression not in the bustling metropolises or settled provinces, but in the confrontation between two seemingly incompatible ways of being, as witnessed in the uneasy, silent standoff between the Vikings and the Sámi of the far north, where the Norse ethos of fearless, direct action met an enigma that could not be conquered by axe or ship. The Vikings, a culture built on the bedrock of visible courage, where hesitation was a flaw and dying peacefully in bed was a professional embarrassment, found their legendary confidence quietly eroding not before a superior army, but before a people and a landscape that refused all the rules of engagement. The Sámi territories, a world of dense, sound-absorbing forests, trackless tundra, and snowfields that erased landmarks, neutralized every Viking advantage. There were no towns to raid, no fixed wealth to plunder, only a mobile people whose wealth walked with them in herds and whose mastery of the environment felt like sorcery. Viking raids, dependent on shock, momentum, and loud, decisive clashes, dissolved into a maddening, silent war of attrition where arrows came from nowhere, supplies vanished, and the land itself seemed to be an active, hostile participant, exhausting heavily armored warriors who were brilliant at dominating but hopeless at enduring. This deeply unsettling resistance, interpreted by the Norse as literal magic and given credence by their own myths where Odin sought wisdom from northern shamans, led not to a shouted declaration of fear, but to a pragmatic, silent withdrawal. The sagas grew vague, maps turned blank, and Viking ships simply began choosing easier, more profitable targets, their retreat not to cowardice, but to a cold calculation that some problems cannot be solved by force, and that the most powerful victory can sometimes be a steadfast refusal to be dominated on the conqueror's terms. This lesson in resilience and the fierce protection of identity through adaptation rather than direct confrontation was woven into the very fabric of certain cultures from birth, as it was for Boudica of the Iceni, whose childhood in eastern Britain was an immersive education in belonging long before it became a rallying cry for rebellion. Growing up in a world of roundhouses and cattle wealth, Boudica's formative years were spent not in sheltered isolation, but in the practical, communal life of her tribe, learning endurance by tending animals, reading the landscape for danger, and understanding that strength was expected of all. Crucially, Iceni society granted female authority visible roles in management and ritual, allowing her to see female authority in action. Her most profound lessons came in the evening firelight, where elders recited the oral histories of ancestors, migrations, and sacred places, stories that mapped identity onto the land itself and sharpened into defensive talismans as the shadow of Rome lengthened. This upbringing, steeped in a culture of resilience, practical strength, and unshakable belonging, forged the core of the leader who would later erupt in fury. She was not suddenly radicalized, but was from the beginning an Iceni woman forged by land and story, who knew with unwavering certainty exactly what was worth fighting for when the time came to defend it. Thus, from the rain-drenched night markets of Edo to the smoky Roman houses of Londinium, from the silent psychological standoff in the Nordic forests to the tribal hearths of Celtic Britain, history reveals itself not solely in the grand arcs of empires and battles, but in these intimate, daily spaces of adaptation, the shared meal in the rain, the painted wall defying the gloom, the quiet decision to avoid an unwinnable fight, the story told by firelight. It is in these spaces that identity is rehearsed and preserved, where comfort is carved from hardship, and where the deepest forms of resistance, whether through the enduring savor of a simple meal, the stubborn maintenance of a custom, the strategic choice to disengage, or the visceral memory of a homeland, are quietly nurtured, long before they ever erupt onto the pages of the history books that will later try, and often fail, to capture their full human essence.